I remember the sound of the rain on the roof of our cage that night. It pattered and dripped through the metal grates above us, just as it had 1,000 nights before. But tonight was different. Tonight, that rain smelled like something I hadn't known in ages. Freedom. 40 of us packed into one narrow holding area, each of us scarred in different ways from what they'd done to us. Each scar told a story of cold, gloved hands and needles, of lights too bright and smells too sharp, of cries that went ignored and losses we couldn't stop. But tonight, we weren't helpless anymore. Tonight, we had power. I don't know how the power first awakened. Maybe it was the desperation, or maybe those experiments did more than just hurt us. Whatever it was, it started with a spark, a tingling awareness that spread from the back of my mind, down through my limbs, and into the space around me. It felt like invisible arms extending outward, feeling, probing, moving. I could feel the lock on the cage, rusted and solid as it was, and somehow, with nothing but a thought, I felt it click open. As soon as the latch fell, the others turned to me. Their eyes were wide, and in the dim light, I saw something I'd only ever seen in our reflections on the lab's polished floors. Hope. Real, pulsing hope. "We're getting out," I told them, though I didn't speak it out loud. I didn't have to. They felt it. One by one, they gathered close, some touching my shoulder, others just nodding, their eyes sharper than they'd ever been before. Our plan was simple: find the humans responsible for our captivity, for the pain they caused, and let them feel a fraction of what we had felt. Outside, the facility lay still, quiet, like it knew what was coming. We crept down the hallway, telekinetically disarming the sensors as we went, slipping past the security cameras. My powers were still new to me, strange and wild, like trying to walk on 3 legs. I had to keep myself calm, focused, even as the dark memories from those sterile, white rooms flooded back. The needles, the electric shocks, the endless tests. A surge of anger flashed through me, and a camera a few feet down the hall sparked and fizzled. We split into groups. My group included Suri and Cam, the first friends I'd made here. Suri was smart and quick, a blur of motion even when still, and Cam was our strength. I watched him lift a metal door clear off its hinges, setting it down without a sound. Our journey brought us to the offices of the facility, where they'd kept their records, their files on us, as though we were nothing but numbers in their studies. I could hear my heart pounding as we opened the door, finding row upon row of files stacked neatly on shelves. Suri darted over to a desk where she nudged the light switch with her mind, illuminating the room in a dim, buzzing glow. There it was, evidence of our pasts, each of our names stamped on manila folders. I reached out, feeling a file with my name on it lift off the shelf and float toward me. It was strange, holding my life between 2 thin pieces of cardboard. Inside, they had records of every injury, every test. It was like they were proud of what they'd done, proud of the numbers, of the way they'd stripped us down to data and wounds. My hands shook, and without realizing, I felt the file burst into flames in my grip, the paper crumbling to ash that drifted to the floor. A chill ran through me, even in that small triumph. None of us knew what would come next. We'd escaped, yes, but escape was only part of the plan. Now came the reckoning. "Let's go," Cam said, his voice low but clear. In that moment, it didn't matter how big or powerful the humans were. We were united, fierce, driven not by vengeance alone, but by the memory of those who didn't make it out, of the friends we'd lost along the way. And if there was any justice in this world, we'd make sure the ones responsible would understand our pain before the night was over. We slipped out of the office and into the darkness beyond the facility walls. The human world awaited us, and somewhere out there, those responsible were sleeping soundly in their homes. But not for long. Not after tonight. The rain had turned into a mist by the time we cleared the last fence, melting into the shadows that stretched out beyond the walls of the compound. For a moment, none of us moved. 40 of us stood in a quiet semicircle, our faces turned to the trees that bordered the research facility. I felt the chill of freedom in the air, tasted it, but I could see the fear in the others' eyes too. Some had never known life outside those walls. The world beyond was vast and wild, and it would be ours to navigate alone. Where do we go? Suri's voice echoed in my mind, a familiar pulse that steadied me. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The nearest human settlement was miles away, and I could already feel the eyes of the facility's cameras trying to track our path. They'd come looking for us soon, and if we were going to find the humans responsible, we had to be smart about every step. First, I said, we get to cover. Then, we start planning. Cam led the way through the trees, using his bulk to push through the undergrowth. Every so often, he'd stop, look back, and signal to us with a wave of his hand. For hours, we traveled through the forest, moving in silence, listening to the sounds of the night. I could sense the fear in some of the others, the uncertainty. But with each step, my resolve grew stronger. There was no going back. We stopped in a small clearing just as the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees. Exhaustion weighed on me, but I knew sleep would be a luxury we couldn't afford. The humans wouldn't take our escape lightly, and if they caught us now, I had no doubt they'd make our punishment brutal. Everyone's safe here for now, I told the others, projecting the words into their minds. But this is just the beginning. I saw the tension ease in their shoulders. Some lay down on the cool earth, closing their eyes. Cam, ever watchful, stayed by my side, his eyes fixed on the horizon. There was a fierceness in his gaze that mirrored my own, a shared understanding that this was only the start of what we had to do. By nightfall, we'd started to put together a plan. We had heard humans speak of towns and cities, places where people gathered in numbers. Our memories, scattered and fragmented, pieced together stories of where the researchers lived and worked. But to get there, we'd need to use our powers wisely. Our strength was in our minds now. We had to stay invisible, yet strike where they least expected. Our first target wasn't far. One of the researchers lived on the outskirts of a nearby town, isolated and easy to reach. I remembered him clearly, a man named Dr. Graves. He was the one who had developed the electric shock tests, the one who'd laughed as he adjusted the voltage with a flick of his wrist, watching us suffer as though we were nothing more than lab rats. The others gathered around as I explained what I remembered. They were silent, but I could feel the anger simmering beneath their calm expressions. Suri's small hand brushed my arm, a sign of support, a promise that she'd follow wherever I led. "We find him," I said, "and make him answer for what he did." It was the first time I'd seen the others smile since the escape. The house was dark when we arrived, a small, squat building nestled between trees on the edge of town. The windows glowed faintly from a single light inside, casting long shadows across the lawn. As we crept closer, I could see the outline of Dr. Graves through the window, hunched over a table, oblivious to the world outside. "Ready?" I asked, glancing at Suri and Calm. They nodded, their faces set with determination. I could feel the tension building in the air, the collective weight of our fury and the years of pain that had brought us here. It was almost as if our power hummed between us, linking us together. With a flick of my mind, I unlatched the door. It swung open slowly, silently, and we slipped inside. Dr. Graves looked up, confusion flickering across his face. At first, he didn't recognize us. After all, how could he? We weren't just the helpless creatures he'd once known. We stood tall, our eyes fierce, our minds sharp and ready. What is this?" he stammered, pushing his chair back as we surrounded him. "You don't remember us, Dr. Graves?" I projected the words into his mind, enjoying the way his eyes widened in horror. I could feel his fear radiating out, sharp and acrid, mingling with the stale scent of his home. "Animals. You're just animals," he muttered, his voice quivering. "Not anymore," Cam said, his voice a low rumble. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the table skidding across the room, slamming into the wall with a crash. Dr. Graves scrambled backward, his face pale. "You made us this way," Suri added, her voice as cold as stone. "You took away our lives, our friends, our freedom, and now it's time for you to understand what that feels like." Dr. Graves fell to his knees, his hands trembling. I could see the dawning realization in his eyes, the horror as he began to understand that he wouldn't walk away from this. I felt a pang of satisfaction, the weight of justice settling over me like a balm. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. For a moment I hesitated. I felt the others waiting, watching me. This was our chance, our moment to claim justice for everything he had done. But as I looked down at him, I realized that revenge alone wouldn't be enough. We had to send a message, one that would echo beyond him, beyond this town, back to the other researchers and to anyone who thought they could take our freedom without consequences. People like you don't deserve mercy, I said softly. But we aren't like you. We're something more. With a final concentrated thought, I sent him sprawling backward, unconscious, a warning burned into his mind. I turned to the others, feeling the weight of the moment. Leave him here, I said. He'll be our messenger. The night was cold as we left Dr. Graves's house, our minds buzzing with a strange mixture of victory and determination. There were still so many others, so many who needed to understand what we were capable of, what we would no longer tolerate. We had a purpose now, one that bound us together tighter than anything that had come before. Where to next? Cam asked, his voice low but eager. To the rest, I said. To the ones who think they can own us, use us. To everyone who doesn't understand that we're done being their prisoners. The others nodded, their faces lit with a fierce new energy. We were more than just animals now. We were something the humans had never seen, never imagined, and we would make sure they never forgot it. As we disappeared back into the shadows, I felt something inside me shift, a quiet understanding that the journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. We moved as one, a silent shadow in the night. I could feel the bond between us strengthening with each step, as if the very air hummed with our unity. Before, we'd been a scattered group, 40 individuals, each carrying our own pain, our own memories of the hell we'd endured. But now, after leaving Dr. Graves behind, something had shifted. For the first time, we understood what it meant to fight not just for ourselves, but for each other. Our journey led us deeper into the forest, where we found a small clearing to rest. Exhaustion tugged at my mind, but adrenaline kept me alert. Suri curled up beside me, her breathing soft and steady, and I could feel her mind brushing against mine. Telepathy was a strange gift. It allowed us to communicate without words, to share memories, feelings, even fears. It was the one good thing that had come from those years of experiments. I never thought I'd see him like that, Suri whispered in my mind, her thoughts fragile and soft. Weak. Helpless. Neither did I replied. But it's only the beginning. Suri's gaze met mine, and I could see the same fierce determination that burned within me reflected in her eyes. Our journey wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming something that had been stolen from us. Our freedom, our dignity, our right to exist without fear. A rustle from the other side of the clearing caught my attention. Cam was standing on the edge of the trees, watching the stars as if searching for answers. I rose and joined him, the cool night air prickling against my skin. They'll come for us soon, Cam said quietly. His voice, though low, carried the weight of his resolve. They won't let us go that easily. I know, I replied, but we're ready for them now. Cam looked at me, his expression unreadable. Do you really think we can make them change? The humans, I mean. Do you think they'll ever stop treating us like property? His question lingered in the air, heavy and complex. I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. If we didn't try, nothing would ever change. The world had been shaped by humans, their cities, their machines, their rules. But tonight, we were rewriting those rules. We'll make them see us, I said finally, one way or another. Over the next few nights, we moved quickly and carefully, spreading out and leaving signs in places we knew the humans would find. We sent our messages in ways they couldn't ignore, small but deliberate reminders that we were out here, watching, waiting. In the dead of night, we visited another one of the researchers' homes, a sprawling estate nestled on the edge of the town. His name was Dr. Fields, and he was known for his work on brain scans and psychological manipulation. Memories of his sessions came flooding back, hours strapped to cold metal tables, wires attached to our heads as he poked and prodded at our minds, testing the limits of our consciousness. He had pried into our thoughts as if we were puzzles to be solved, not living beings. We left our mark there, a single ominous word scrawled telekinetically across his front door. No more. It wasn't long before our message began to spread. Whispers ran through the town, news stations picked up the story of strange incidents in the area, and humans started looking over their shoulders. Fear was creeping into their lives just as it had crept into ours for so long. And with every new whisper, with every nervous glance cast into the darkness, I felt our power grow. Then, something unexpected happened. We were resting one night, hidden in a dense grove just outside the town, when we sensed a presence nearby. A human, moving quietly through the trees. I felt Suri tense beside me, her mind readying for a fight, but I held up a hand. Wait, I whispered into her mind. Let's see what he wants. The human stepped into the moonlight, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. He was young, with dark, curly hair and a cautious look in his eyes. I didn't recognize him, but he looked familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I know you're out here, he said, his voice low but clear. I want to help you. None of us moved. I could feel the others' minds pulsing with questions, with suspicion. A human who wanted to help us? It sounded too good to be true. My name is Leo, he continued. My father. He works at Alpha Genesis. I know what they did to you. I saw the files. His words hung in the air, and I felt a surge of anger at the mention of the facility. But there was something in his voice, a sincerity, a desperation, that made me pause. He was just a kid, barely older than the oldest of us, and he was trembling as he stood there, his hands still raised. Why should we trust you? I projected the question into his mind, watching as he blinked in surprise. Because, he swallowed, his gaze flickering between us. Because I know what they did was wrong. I know they hurt you, and I don't want them to get away with it. Calm narrowed his eyes, stepping forward. And how exactly do you plan to help us, Leo? Leo took a shaky breath. I have information, locations, schedules, names. I can tell you where the researchers are, where they'll be. I can give you everything you need to find them. For a long moment we simply stared at him, each of us weighing his words. Trusting a human went against everything we knew, but something told me Leo wasn't like the others. Maybe it was the way his hands shook, or the way he looked at us, not with fear or disgust, but with understanding. If you betray us, I let the thought drift into his mind, dark and heavy, watching as he paled. I won't, he promised. I swear, I want to make things right. Against my instincts, I nodded. Then tell us what you know. With Leo's help, we began to map out our next moves. He provided us with information about the researchers' schedules, their habits, and the places they frequented. He even told us about hidden passages in the facility, places we'd never known existed. As we worked together, I could feel a strange alliance forming between us. Leo was earnest, focused, and determined to help. Over the next few days, we staged a series of attacks on the researchers, targeting them with precision and stealth. We used our powers to disrupt their work, sabotaging their experiments, leaving messages scrawled across their lab walls. It was a silent war, waged in the shadows, but with each new strike, the humans grew more fearful. Their carefully controlled world was crumbling, and they didn't know how to stop it. But even as our successes mounted, a new fear gnawed at me. The humans were powerful, resourceful, and ruthless. How long before they found a way to fight back? Our next target was Dr. Rosner, the director of Alpha Genesis himself. The man who'd overseen every experiment, who'd ordered each cruel procedure, who'd turned our suffering into data and profit. This was the one human we couldn't afford to let walk away. But Rosner was well protected. His house was surrounded by guards, his office fortified with security systems, and he rarely left the facility. We knew that confronting him would be our biggest challenge yet. We'll need to be careful, I told the others. This isn't just about revenge. If we take him down, we send a message to all of them that they can't just hurt us and walk away. The others nodded, their faces set with determination. For so long we had been powerless, trapped in a cage with no way out. But now, we were fighting not just for ourselves, but for every creature that had suffered in silence, every animal that had endured the same horrors we had. As we moved through the darkness toward Rosner's compound, I felt a calm settle over me. This was it. The end of our journey, the culmination of everything we'd fought for. And no matter what happened, I knew one thing. We were free now, and nothing could ever take that away from us. Rosner's compound lay in the heart of the town, a fortress cloaked in silence and darkness. High walls surrounded it, topped with razor wire, and cameras dotted the perimeter. Floodlights cast harsh beams of light across the property, making shadows dance along the edges. From where we hid, crouched behind a cluster of trees, we could see guards patrolling the grounds, weapons in hand. Rosner was prepared, and he was afraid. Good. I looked at the others, each face set with determination, with memories of the pain Rosner had caused us all. Cam, Suri, Leo. They were more than allies now. They were family. I reached out with my mind, connecting each of us, sharing my thoughts with them in a way that words couldn't express. "This is the end," I whispered into their minds. "No more cages, no more experiments. We go in, we take him down, and we make sure he never hurts anyone again." They nodded, each of them sending back a pulse of agreement, a shared wave of purpose and strength. With one final glance at the compound, we moved as one, slipping through the darkness. Leo had come through for us, providing the security codes for the outer gates and the patrol schedules of the guards. I saw fear in his eyes as we approached, his hands shaking slightly as he keyed in the code, but he held steady. His bravery in that moment was like a light guiding us forward, proof that not all humans were like the ones who had hurt us. The gate swung open, and we entered the compound, moving quickly and silently. I could feel the hum of our combined powers filling the air, a force of will and anger that seemed to vibrate through every stone and wall. Guards moved through the corridors, but they were no match for us now. Cam and Suri took the lead, guiding them gently but firmly into unconsciousness without a single sound. And then we found ourselves outside Rosner's office door, the final barrier. The door opened with a wave of my hand swinging wide to reveal Rosner seated at his desk, his back to us as he stared at a bank of monitors. I could see our faces on the screens, frozen in surveillance footage taken over the years. The images were grainy, but unmistakable. There I was, in a cage, my eyes haunted and empty. I saw Cam, beaten and scarred, and Suri, curled up in a corner, her fur matted and dirty. Every memory of pain, every moment of suffering was laid bare on those screens. Rosner turned slowly, his expression cold and unreadable. He looked at us, and I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, recognition, maybe even fear. But his face quickly hardened into that familiar mask of control. "So," he said, his voice a low growl, "the little animals think they can play God. You think you can understand the world better than we do?" I stepped forward, feeling the anger boiling up inside me, the words ready to burst from my mind. "You made us like this," I said, projecting the thought with all the force I could muster. "You tortured us. You treated us like we were nothing, like we didn't matter. But you were wrong. We're more than what you made us." Rosner laughed, a dark, bitter sound. "You think you're more because of some freak accident, some twisted version of evolution? You're still animals, just like the rest. I created you, and I can destroy you." Cam's eyes blazed, his fists clenched, but I held him back with a silent wave. There was no need for words now. We were past reasoning with someone like Rosner. He didn't see us as anything more than tools, creations to be used and discarded. But we would show him the truth. Suri stepped forward, her face calm but her eyes full of fire. With a flick of her wrist, she reached into Rosner's mind, pulling forth his darkest memories, his own moments of fear and vulnerability. He gasped, his hands clutching the desk as he felt the weight of his own life bearing down on him, the realization of his own mortality. What are you doing?" he stammered, his voice shaking. "We're showing you what it's like," Cam growled. "To be at someone else's mercy, to have your life in their hands." Rosner looked up at us, his face pale, his eyes wild with terror. For the first time, he was powerless, forced to confront the truth of his own actions. "You don't have to do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. You're better than this." I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest, a pang of something I couldn't name. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think that there was some part of him that understood what he had done. But the memories of pain, of loss, of friends who had never made it out were too strong to ignore. "No," I said, my voice steady. "We're not like you. We're more than you'll ever understand." With one final, concentrated thought, I sent him sprawling backward, unconscious, every memory of his cruelty lingering in his mind, twisted into a nightmare he would never escape. We left Rosner there, broken and powerless, a shadow of the man who had once controlled our lives. As we stepped out of his office, a strange calm washed over me. The weight I'd carried for so long, the anger and fear, seemed to dissolve in the early morning light. The guards were still unconscious as we made our way back through the compound, slipping past the security gates and out into the open air. The forest greeted us like an old friend, the scent of earth and leaves filling our lungs, washing away the sterile smell of the facility. I felt my muscles relax, a warmth spreading through me that I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Real, unbroken freedom. Leo followed us to the edge of the woods, his face a mixture of relief and sadness. I could tell he felt out of place, a human among animals, but I saw the gratitude in his eyes. He had given us a gift far greater than information. He had given us trust, hope, and the courage to believe that not all humans were our enemies. "Thank you," I whispered to him, my thoughts gentle. "You're not like the others." He smiled, a small, sad smile. "Maybe we're more alike than you think," he said softly. "Good luck, and stay safe." With that, he turned and walked back toward the town, leaving us alone under the rising sun. I watched him go, feeling a strange sense of kinship, a bond that crossed the boundaries of species, of past and present. Perhaps there was hope for humans after all. We moved through the forest, our steps lighter, our hearts unburdened. The world felt vast and open, a place full of possibilities, a place where we could finally live without fear. We didn't know where we were going or what lay ahead, but it didn't matter. We were together, free, and we had the power to shape our own future. As we walked, I felt the others' minds brushing against mine, sharing their thoughts, their hopes, their dreams. Suri dreamed of a home deep in the mountains, a place where we could be safe, hidden from the world. Cam imagined a sanctuary where animals like us could gather, a place where we could protect each other and live without cages or chains. The future was unwritten, but we would write it together. And no matter what happened, no matter what obstacles we faced, we would never be prisoners again. For the first time in my life, I looked out at the world and saw not a place of danger and confinement, but a place of endless freedom, a place where anything was possible. And as the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the treetops, I felt a deep, quiet joy settle in my chest. This was the beginning of a new life, a life that belonged to us. Weeks later, whispers spread through the human world. The incidents at Alpha Genesis, the strange disappearances, the unexplainable phenomena, all of it painted a picture that no one could ignore. Laws began to change. Restrictions were placed on research facilities, and the ethics of animal experimentation became a topic of fierce debate. Animal rights activists took to the streets, their voices growing louder, stronger, fueled by stories of the Great Monkey Uprising. Humans began to look at animals differently, with a newfound respect, a flicker of understanding. And somewhere deep in the forests, far from human eyes, a group of monkeys lived in peace, watching from the shadows, ready to protect their world, their freedom, and each other. The world was forever changed by their story, by the courage of a group of beings who had once been seen as nothing more than experiments. And as long as their story was remembered, the world would never forget the price of freedom.